Friends. My name's Tilly and I really wanted to go to Burnholme because it would be easier for me to walk there, whereas Archbishop's it's far away from where we live and I wouldn't be able to walk there without getting a taxi or my dad's lift.
Oh, talk about putting the MP under pressure. Tilly, Evie and Maisie, the pleading voices of the young. Let's just hear from Simon, who joins us on the line. Good morning, Simon.
Hiya. Tilly got cut up halfway through the conversation tonight because she was so upset.
Just to say that at least one of those young ladies is your daughter.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're the chairman of the Tanghall and Heworth Residents Association, which includes the catchment for Burnholme Community College. What's your message to Hugh Bailey about the likelihood that the school will close?
Right, well, I can understand where they've turned around to people and said that it's just not viable. But if you look around the street where I live in, all of it's gone to student lets completely. I think there's about 4 families down our street now, and there's probably about 60 houses, I would have thought, maybe even more. And I just think that's totally wrong. It's been a really good school. I know lots of people that's been at the school, and I know lots of people that are still going to the school. And they're very, very upset that this fine school is going to have to close. It's been there. I mean, the kids from St Lawrence's School, they go down there quite regular and do lots of sports entertainment and activities down there, which has been really good and been put on by them.
OK, well, Simon, just hang fire there, because I want to hear what Hugh Bailey's response to this is. Mr Bailey, whose side are you on, the local people or the City Council?
Well, first of all, I'd say to Simon, if a residents' association wants to get me there talking to me, or if a parent-teachers association at the school wants to get me there talking, or the school governors or individual parents, I'm very much up for that. 3 years ago, exactly the same threat was hung over the school, threat of closure which came from the council. I went to talk to the school and the governors and parents at the time. I think it's a school that has performed particularly well. It used to have a poor reputation. Under its present leadership, it's turned that round. It has the best added value score of any school in York. That's to say how far the young people progress from their level of attainment at the time they enter the school to their level of attainment at the time they leave the school. There is a real problem with numbers, although last time I argued, when I made the case for the school to stay open, that with the Derwentthorpe development there would be more families moving in and more demand for places, and I hope that's something...
It's a point that many people have made this week. They're asking, where are those kids going to go to school?
Well, that's something which a consultation exercise must address, and the questions must be asked, and there must be a convincing answer in terms of numbers. If there is to be no Burnholme, does Archbishop's have the capacity for what could be another 500, almost 500 households in the area?
What's the closure of this school going to do to one of what has to be said is one of York's less privileged communities? I've got a note here from Graham that says, please can you ask Hugh Bailey if he will support the endeavours of the Burnholme community to save their school? It's obviously, it's people in the area feel quite passionate about it. What carries more weight, people's passion and having a school in the community, or the economic arguments that it's just not viable?
Well, the economic arguments do have a bearing. As I was saying in answer to your question earlier, the government's cut £5 million of funding from the City of York, and that's put a lot of services under threat. Looking at the community dimension, Burnholme, of course, calls itself a community college and has many outreach activities, including community and adult education, which are run from the school for the benefit of the community as a whole. And I personally hope the school doesn't close, but I think it's absolutely essential, if it were to close, for 2 things to happen. First of all, for the council to make sure that that community college role is still provided in the Tanghall area and not, on the other side of a Hull Road, from on the other side of the Hull Road. Secondly, there's some really big issues for the 270 or so kids who are there. It won't be the first time that a secondary school in York has closed, but it's extremely important to focus on those children, because children only get one secondary education, to make sure that their needs are properly cared for.
Simon,
over the period of time they're at secondary school.
Simon, it sounds like Mr. Bailey said he's prepared to take an interest, to come and talk to you, to be part of this debate. Is that some comfort to you?
Yeah, that's a lot of comfort. I think we need to have the school there. I'm speaking on behalf of Tang Hall and Heworth, and there's always been a big divide in Tang Hall. Once you get over the bridge, it's classed as Heworth. When you get over the other side of the bridge, it's classed as Tang Hall, even though it's still Tang Hall Lane and Melrose Gate. We struggle for numbers going to our meetings. The Tang Hall Community Centre, that struggles. It's not going to be long before we start to lose these things unless people get involved.
Well, it sounds to me like you've got one more person involved in the shape of your local MP. Hugh Bailey, we just must press on because...
Call my office. Simon must call my office, 623-713. Call it today and we'll fix up a time to meet and talk
Put the two of you in touch. Question for you. Next week on this programme, we're going to be hearing from a man in York. He lives in a tiny one-bedroom flat with his, I think his 4-year-old son. He is desperate for somewhere slightly bigger to live. Now, I don't expect you to provide instant help with just sort of on the spur of the moment few details about a case, but housing is becoming a real issue in York, and I happen to know that next week's Inside Out programme on BBC Television is discussing this increasingly difficult issue of finding affordable housing in the city. What are you doing to help the situation? I've
sought and obtained debates in Parliament. I've gone to meet face-to-face the Housing Minister, and the case I make is this. York, according to a recent survey by Shelter, the housing pressure group, is the most unaffordable place to find housing, whether you're seeking to rent or buy, in the north of England. When Labour was in power, the number of jobs in York increased enormously, almost by half, from 40,000 jobs to 57,000 jobs. That's extremely welcome. It means that the unemployment level, although rising sharply and much higher than it was, is lower in York than in most other places in Yorkshire and the north of England. But it has left us with a huge housing problem. We had 17,000 extra jobs, but nothing like 17,000 extra homes, as a result of which the pressures of supply and demand mean that rents have been pushed up and up. And if the government wants York to continue to prosper and help to lead the region and the north of England out of recession, which it has a key role in doing, then they need to provide the housing so that the workforce that will do that will be able to live near their jobs. And I've particularly been arguing against changes to the housing benefit rules. Now, the housing benefit rules lump York, where rents are extremely high, together with other areas in Selby and Malton and Goole, where rents are much lower. And I have a meeting in about a month's time. I wish it was earlier, but that's the date I've got from the Minister, to go back and see him and ask him to change the housing benefit rules so that housing benefit in York is based on rents in York and not rents in Goole. Because if people are have to move from York to Goole to find somewhere that they can afford to rent, many of them with jobs in York, lower paid jobs in retailing, perhaps in the hotel or restaurant or a catering business, will find that they won't be able to get in because there are no buses for early shifts in the morning and late shifts at night.
And what's the impact of that on the city?
Well, the impact on the city will mean that it'll be harder to find people to do these jobs, and that will affect the viability of some firms that rely on hiring these people. It also has a fundamental impact on people York born and bred who haven't become university professors, who want a decent job, a regular job in their own city, and feel they, and in many cases are, being priced out of our own city. And for those who have prospered with the jobs boom, 1 in 10 jobs in our patch now are high technology science jobs. Both universities continue to expand and provide high paid jobs, but those people need somebody to fix their car, somebody to cut their hair, they need somebody to serve them when they go to Tesco's or Sainsbury's or one of the supermarkets. We need a balanced community, and if York people, the people who are providing those basic services that everybody relies on, are priced out, then they face a penalty. and the city as a whole faces a penalty.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, we
environmental problems too as they travel in and out.
Okay, want to stop you there because we've just got 5 minutes of your time left. I want to go back to the lines. David is calling the programme. He actually spoke on air the other morning to raise the issue of care. In his case, it's the care that his son is receiving. And David is back with us on the line then again this morning. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
What's the point you want to make to Hugh Bailey?
Well, we're in contact with Hugh over my son's situation at the moment.
This is Thomas.
Yes, this is Thomas. He's in Oakrise at Acomb.
What's the point you want to make? Because we're talking about the care of the most vulnerable people.
Yeah,
we're almost going back to where we started, which is the council tax, and whether the people in greatest need are going to get the most protection.
Well, Thomas isn't getting any feedback whatsoever from council, in respect that Thomas is being placed into Oakrise. It's a psychiatric unit. He's got severe learning difficulties. He's got Down syndrome and autism. And he's got a very, very bad, severe learning difficulties and behaviour problems. Now, it was in a purpose-built place at Huntington for young adults with autism, and Thomas wasn't suitable for it, so they pulled him out of there and the funding was stopped. Now, he's been placed into Oakrise, and we asked if there was going to be any people to take Thomas out on a daily basis in such as Rebound and up to it used to be Oakland Sports Centre for him to get some exercise, basically. And the manager from Oakrise turned around and says, well, we can't afford that because there's no funding in place. The council's pulled the funding on Thomas's package that he was getting, and there's no funding there to do it now. Now, we're having to go up on a regular basis on an afternoon to pick him up sort of 1:30, 2 o'clock to bring him out of there. So basically, he can just get some fresh air and come home with either me or his mother to pick him up, and we're doing what the council should be funding.
Let's get Hugh Bailey's response to this. This is a council that you were robustly, stoutly defending earlier on in the programme, Mr. Bailey, and does seem to be letting David and Thomas, his son, down quite badly.
Well, let's talk first about Thomas. In terms of making representations to the council to explain what David and Thomas's mother want in terms of care and support, I'm very much up to do. The case illustrates starkly the pressure on the council. Of the £2 million extra that they'll be raising from the council tax increase, that almost entirely goes for social services for people like Thomas, in order to provide support. If they hadn't gone for the council tax rise, there would have been even more pressure on the support that the council gives to people like Thomas. The council's between a rock and a hard place, but it's my job to act as an advocate for my constituents, and I most certainly will.
How can you act as an advocate, though, if the council's dug its heels in? If David doesn't feel that Thomas is getting the service he deserves, what can you do? I mean, David, is that a reasonable enough question?
It is, yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Hugh Bailey?
I have about 250 constituents each week who get in touch with me with a problem they have with one of the agencies, whether it's a council or Job Centre Plus, or in relation to their pension, or in relation to support for families of servicemen, or whatever the issue might be, about 250 a week. I will make representations to the relevant body. In this case, it's a council on behalf of the constituent. I don't have a magic wand, and I can't guarantee that everybody gets what they're after.
Okay, we will be interested to see.
At least it makes sure that their case is heard, and if there's an entitlement, that the entitlement then is provided.
In our closing seconds, Mr. Bailey, one of the big issues facing York at the moment, as you'll be well aware, is this proposed expansion of out-of-town shopping at Monk's Cross, tied into the development of a new community sports stadium and the possible impact on the city centre. It's a very controversial issue at the moment. A couple of questions, a couple of points, and then we'll hear your view.
My name is Lucia Martin, and I'd like to ask, how does Hugh Bailey feel that York, a city of about 150,000 people, is able to support the new development at Monk's Cross, which is going to be larger than Meadow Hall?
Hi, my name's Karen. I'm a new business in York. I just want to know how you're going to protect us when the Monk's Cross 2 is developed.
Hugh Bailey, whose side are you on? The local people, or the traders in the city who are telling us constantly they fear for their future, or the council and the sports clubs who want the big M&S and John Lewis and the sports stadium built?
A big and complex issue. I hope you'll let me run through the issues. First, on the sports club, I think it's really important that York's professional sports clubs, football and rugby league, get a proper stadium. They attract a lot of tourists to York even now, even though they're, the football club's not yet back in the Football League. I think if they get a proper stadium, do get back in the league, it's a good advert for York. It draws people to York, and it's very important. And the council, under the previous administration, as it happens, set up a task force to look at the best place to build the stadium, and they came up with this as the best option.
Mr. Bailey, with respect, we've got hang on. We've got seconds left of the programme.
Well, in which case, let me speak. Let me speak. Please, let me speak.
I will do. I simply want to know which side of this you can outline. What
there are many sides.
Yeah,
you can't simplify. Well, let me answer, please. Please. You say there's not much time. So, in relation to retailing, I have made representations to the council. I've met with the York Chamber of Trade, for instance, who fear that a large development out of town, not as large as Meadowhall, I have to say, that's a myth, but a large development out of town will have an impact on retailing in town, and I think the council needs a retailing strategy. I've suggested, for instance, that if this goes ahead, and it's the council's decision on a planning matter, not mine as an MP, but if it were to go ahead, then I think they have to put in planning conditions, for instance, saying to John Lewis that anybody who spends, shall we say, more than £10 or £20 in John Lewis's gets a free park and ride ticket. And the one last thing I'd want to say is exactly the same people, retailers from the city centre, complained to me at the time the Neighbourne designer outlet was being planned. They persuaded me that it would be catastrophic for the city centre. I campaigned against that. In fact, the way it was run, it was a win-win because it brought a park and ride, an extra park and ride to York. Even before the park and ride was set up, the Designer Village organised a bus shuttle from the centre to the Designer Village and back, so that people who came to the Designer Village could also come in and have.
So, do you say that the traders in the city?
Plan the whole thing.
Sure, you do. Sure, you do. Do you say to the traders in the city that their fears are foundless?
I think you need to remember that the Chamber of Commerce, which represents many traders in the city centre, is strongly in favour. The Chamber of Trade, which represents many other city centre traders, is strongly against. So when you say whose side are you on, on the side of the city as a whole. And what I want to do is create development and employment opportunities in the city. One of the things at a time of very great economic difficulty, when you have a 70-80 million pound development which will create lots of jobs in the construction industry and jobs in retailing, and create a better future for the sports clubs which will attract hundreds of visitors when they have home games, then you've got to look very seriously at that. But you also have to look very seriously at the impact on existing retailing businesses and decide what you can do to mitigate and hopefully, as with the Neighbourne case, actually get rid of those pressures. And I think the different pressures on different parts of a retailing sector, if you look at some streets like Walmgate or Micklegate, for instance, there's obviously enormous pressure, greater pressure on them than the multiple chains. So the council also needs to focus on what it can do for local and York businesses.
Hugh Bailey, it's been fun talking to you as ever this morning. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Join us on BBC Radio York again sometime in the future, will you?
I will. I'm happy to, anytime.
Thank you very much indeed. And we'll play out with this. 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 And we'll play